Okay, so I was tossing up whether or not I actually bothered doing this video just because we're starting to get into account executive territory now. However, um, I am going to edit my account executive how to run discovery videos or video directly into this one, right? So at least you can get a peek, quite a solid peek, a very in-depth peek actually, on how to run discoveries. So if you are an SDR and you want to know how to run discoveries, watch this video. This is going to be quite a heavy video with a lot of content. So like, turn off all your notifications. If you don't have a solid hour plus, like save this video for when you do, or at least do a solid 30-40 minutes now, and then block out some more time to get through the rest of this. Like, this is very important content, even as an SDR. Now, where is this video going to be useful? If you're an SDR and you're kind of getting to that 6 to 9 month mark and you have gotten quite comfortable in your role, I would really encourage you to start to get some discovery calls going by yourself, right? Like, speak to your AE, speak to your managers, and maybe pick some accounts that aren't critical accounts, right? So if you remember our tiering framework, and by the way, if you don't know what the tiering framework is, go watch the full SDR Readiness Series down below. I talk about how to tier your accounts. But if we take, say, tier 3 accounts, right? Tier 2 accounts that aren't necessarily priority, and ideally not with super senior stakeholders. Like, you got to keep in mind, like, you don't want to get on a call with like a CIO and then fucking butcher it, because they will never talk to you again and they will never talk to your company again. So it's not a good look. But I will recommend that if you get a chance to do some supervised or unsupervised discoveries with lower down stakeholders. So for that scenario, this video will be useful for you. So go through, take tons of notes, and use it, and tell me how you go down in the comments below, okay? And all the assets that you need, you can download it in the links below. And for the full SDR Readiness Series, again, my team has a link down below. Download, we'll open it in a separate tab. Go ham, binge watch it. Makes for good viewing on date nights. For all the guys out there, trust me, girlfriends love it when you do sales training with Joe on a Saturday night over some wine and cheese. Like, it's super romantic, really sets the mood. All right, get into it. Okay, so we are going to dive into the discovery. Now, this is one of my favorite topics. I genuinely believe, whether or not you're selling small, medium, mid-market, enterprise, large enterprise, strategic accounts, discovery is the core of success in tech sales. Like, great discovery, man, like, that is 80% of your deal success right there. One of the things that I learned during my time at Gartner, I spent close to 3 and a bit years at Gartner very early in my sales journey. I was a rookie then. I was like 22, 23 when I got hired. And I was reporting to some of the best sales leaders then. Honestly, I learned so much. It contributed directly to my success. I was one of the youngest global #1 reps at Gartner, and keeping in mind, Gartner has thousands of salespeople, multiple years of massive commissions, massive success. Like, all of that I credit to the training that I got at Gartner, and all of that I credit to having great leadership. And one of the things that one of my VPs at Gartner, one of my vice presidents at Gartner told me was, like, your deal is made or broken in the discovery. When you show up with a highly professional, polished discovery approach, the amount of credibility and trust you build is like exponential. And I know I'm harping on a little bit before I get into this, and trust me, like, I'll show you, I've got stuff lined up for you that you've never seen before. So I will give you the dark arts of extremely successful sales reps and what people do to stand out. But what I will say is, as a newly minted account executive, if you're a new SMB account executive, or maybe you're in your first year and a bit, you haven't really gotten any real sales training, you don't know what the fuck you're doing, what I will tell you, and this is what you want to think about, is everything is a game of probabilities in sales. If you do something really well in discovery, it might increase the probability of you getting a deal done by 10%, by 20%. If you do something really well in the demo, that's an extra 10% likelihood of a deal close. If you do something really well in in terms of deal viability, then that's maybe an extra 10%. Like, all of this cumulatively adds up. But by far, the biggest differentiator, the thing that will add the most in the positive column for you in terms of your odds of closing this deal, is the discovery. So how do you get into a discovery? Before we do that, just for anyone that has just dropped in cold into this video is part of a broader series of SMB account executive readiness. So I have a bunch of videos in a playlist. My team should have that included in the description below, the link to that playlist. If you're dropping in cold to this video, you haven't seen the previous videos, highly recommend load that up, watch those videos, so that this will make a little bit more sense. I'm building on a lot of content that I've spoken about in prior videos. So give yourself the opportunity to go through those. Open that in a separate window and go through those. Now, in terms of this video, take notes, download this asset. My team should have a link in the description below. Download this, sit down, pay attention, take notes. Like, this is not to be, this video is not to be consumed in like 2-minute increments. Like, you really got to switch off everything else and really dial into this, because I'm going to give you guys a bunch of very dense, valuable content, which is all based off real world experience. So this shit works. So one of the biggest things that I see reps getting wrong, especially when they are new into tech sales, is a lack of focus on preparation. But the question is often, what do I prepare? What do I do? What does the format need to look like? Like, how do I spend my time, right? And so what I've done is literally broken this down for you, and I've included all the decks that I will use to present to the customer. So I will include all those assets that you can access. So it's a no-brainer, right? I want you guys to win. So here is how you prepare for a discovery, right? So what you do is you build a customer one-pager, or what I like to call a value hypothesis or a value proposition, right? So for the sake of terminology, I'm going to call it a value proposition or a VP. Okay. So if you hear me talking about VPs, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about vice presidents. I'm talking about value propositions. Okay. So through building this value proposition, that's how you start to understand what questions you're going to ask the prospect. Now, I will give you a framework for what questioning needs to look like, because that is another big topic that I get asked on. It's like, hey, what questions do I ask? How do I ask them the questions, et cetera, et cetera. So what is a value proposition? This is a value proposition. Now, you're probably looking at this and going, holy shit, this looks pretty intense. This looks like it's, really, really over the top. It is a little over the top, but there's a reason that you want to have this level of discovery preparation. Now, this is something that I actually present to the customer on the discovery. And it doesn't matter if you're in small business sales, mid-market sales, or large enterprise sales, you want to be using the VP. The VP is such a powerful tool to build trust and credibility and get them to open up about their business and share details with you that you can later use to close them, right? And you think about the 3 things that you need to get deals done: pain, urgency, and power. This VP will help you surface all 3 of those things, okay? So how do you go about creating this, preparing this? Very straightforward. The best way to do it is with AI. Now, prior to AI, before that, it was manual. You had to kind of go through and screw around and get this done. But what I've done is actually create a set of prompts that you can use and then input it into this template so that you can actually create this value proposition. So what you can do, right, to streamline the preparation of this value proposition is I have a template in this slide deck to make your life easier, because I am that helpful. I've included a GPT prompt, right? So literally just take this GPT prompt, chuck it into ChatGPT. If you don't already use premium GPT, like you don't pay for it, then I recommend you get that. Or you can just use DeepSeek. I haven't played around with DeepSeek a whole lot, but I think it's pretty good, and it's free, and it's pretty much, if I'm not wrong, on par with ChatGPT, the paid version. So either or, whatever AI flavor of choice. This prompt basically is already built out. So it says taking the company website, so insert the website link, the LinkedIn page attached, so insert the LinkedIn page, and the annual report attached, so attach the annual report if there is one, and then just basically throw that prompt in there. It's already pre-built. It'll build out a table for you. Take the inputs from that table and map that into these boxes over here. You'll need to do a little bit of editing. So go ahead and edit it. Now, what I will say is, depending on what you sell, you may or may not be able to find the technology challenges, right? Like the tech challenges are kind of, it could give you tech challenges that technically you don't solve for. So watch out for that. So if you need to, keep these blank, right? Like I've had discoveries where I basically just kept this blank. But at least you'll know what the strategic goals are and what a hypothesis of the technology goals could be. Now I'll talk to you about how you actually surface this in the discovery, right? Like when we get into the discovery section itself, like which we are, but when we really get into like how you open and frame the discovery and get into it, I will show you how you can actually frame this up. So that is effectively how you do your prep. This is your prep, right? So when people talk about how do I prep for my discoveries, this is how you prep for your discoveries. It's really straightforward, right? So you want to minimize unnecessary work. So if your prep can translate directly into an asset that you present to the customer, that is the most efficient and effective way to prep. So it's pretty idiot proof. Just follow the prompts, use the prompts, edit this. Again, I'll have a link to this asset up there so you're able to just go in and do the prep work for it, right? So you can actually just use it. This is something that if you do need additional help, like that's something that we can work together on to actually contextualize for your business. Again, like not every business is the same. So I totally appreciate, like if you're selling a bit of a niche service, like a tech service, maybe you're a cyber services provider, like this might look a little bit different. So do the best that you can, but if you do need help, just book some time in with me in the link below. We can have a chat about kind of how you're operating and what you're doing. Now, once you've done that and filled out the boxes, the last thing I will include, and this is really just to give your prospects some validation, insert logos, insert some logos over here of customers that you work with, right? So in this section over here, so I don't know why I highlighted that yellow, Jesus, that's a terrible choice of color. Here we go. So insert some logos over here. So if you have a look, this is one that I did for Zscaler, right? For one of my customers that I sold to at Zscaler. Now this is a very like built out, sophisticated, like this was like the final version of it, right? So yours doesn't have to look this sexy. All it needs to do is make sure that it captures the key elements, the vision of the company, the strategic goals, the technology challenges, if you can find stuff that is aligned to you. If it's not, you can hypothesize this. Like you could literally say, hey, I think that these 3 things could be your challenges. And then when you show up to the discovery, you actually validate that with them, right? So that's another way you could do this. But again, this is a little bit case by case. If you do need help implementing it, reach out to me. Like I said, this is what like a kind of sexy finished finished one looks like, right? But you should have some logos here. So when I was at Zscaler, Zscaler had, McDonald's, Guzman and Gomez, Uber, they were all Zscaler's customers. So I actually put these logos in because the company I was selling to, Detmold, these were their customers as well. So I was kind of saying, hey, like, we work with your own customers, right? Like, your own customers trust us, which is why you should trust us, right? So insert some logos here if you have some public references. If you don't, that's fine. Just delete the section, right? Just get rid of that section. Again, that's like case by case, right? So you can go ahead and decide what you want to do there. Sorry, I think I just duplicated this. There we go. All right, so that is how you prep. Now, on the topic of prep, I see a lot of reps skip prep, and you cannot skip prep. If I were you, and what I used to typically do is usually about 2 days before a call or a first meeting, I would make sure that I had like 30 minutes in the calendar to do some prep, right? And that's so important. You want to make sure that you don't skip this, because if you skip this, it will come and bite you in the ass, because you're going to show up unprepared. Now, let's get into the discovery. How do you actually conduct a discovery? I should have plenty of content on my broader channel of like live discovery role play. So I may even actually link that below. So we'll see how we go for that. But I think this should give you a pretty good idea. Like, I'll walk you through this. Should give you a pretty good idea of how to actually go about running a discovery. Now, I always like to start the discovery off with establishing some credibility and trust through an authentic intro, right? So it's so important that we don't turn into robots. Like, when we're selling, we want to make sure that we understand, like, people buy from people, people buy from people. So take a quick couple of minutes, right? I would usually open off the discovery and say, hey, thanks for the time. Really good to catch up. We've got 45 minutes in the calendar, just confirming that works for you. So do a quick time check. Once they say yes, awesome. Hey, firstly, just a quick intro. I work for X company. Excited to speak to you today because we're doing a lot with your peers, but outside of work, I live in Sydney. I've got 2 kids, and you find me walking in the park on a weekend and, chasing my kids. That's a little bit about me outside of work. Just tell me a little bit about yourself. I've seen your professional bio on LinkedIn, but mate, just keen to hear a little bit about yourself, professionally and personally as well. Get to know them a tiny bit. Now, read the room. If you're speaking to someone and they're all business, you're all business, right? Like, don't try to force rapport, okay? You're not, if you sense that they're not there looking for another friend, that's totally fine. But some people are very personable. Like, I've sold to people that are incredibly personable. They've hopped on the call and they've wanted to just get to know me for a good 10 minutes. And I've gotten to get to know them for a good 10 minutes, and I've allowed them the time to do that. So this is where it's important that you're not a robot, right? Like, I know you have time and you have to like get all the stuff done on the call, but like, if they're personable people, then match their energy. Be personable. That's really important, right? It's important to mirror who you're dealing with. Following the pleasantries, you want to establish a clear purpose for the call. So just say, I usually clearly articulate that. I'll say, hey, the purpose for today's call or the purpose for today's meeting is to learn a bit more about your organization and share some insights into how we're helping your peers. How's that sound for you? So that establishes the purpose of that conversation. The next thing you want to do is establish an upfront contract. Now, for any of you that don't know what the upfront contract of the UFC is, no, the UFC is not the Ultimate Fighting Championships, even though I do love watching UFC. The upfront contract or the UFC is a powerful, powerful tool that you can use. And this is something that I learned from going through Sandler sales training. And essentially, the idea of an upfront contract is to let them know that if there is no value, they can walk away. But if there is value, that we'll explore next steps. So it's a social contract. It's saying, look, if there's nothing here, I'm not going to try to forcibly sell you. But if there is something here, let's explore this a little bit further. And then you get their acknowledgement that that's okay. So important to do. Don't skip this part. So once you establish a UFC, which I'll show you exactly how to establish that, which is on the next slide over here. But once you establish the UFC, you also just get a mutually confirmed agenda. You say, look, in terms of exactly what we'll cover off today, I want to just do a little bit of digging around your business. I've got something that I've prepared to showcase your business, and I'd love to get your inputs on that. That way, when I share a bit more about us, it's contextualized to you. So in terms of an agenda, is that all good, right? So the purpose and the agenda are slightly different. I usually use that agenda as a bit of a scene setter, so they know that I'm about to share some stuff about them, right? So they know that I'm about to share a VP or a value proposition slide. So it's a nice little way to sort of change the dynamic of the discovery, right? You're basically saying, look, I've taken the time to prepare and learn about you. I'd love to replay that back to you, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, and you let me know what's relevant to you, and then I'll tell you about us based off what you share, right? Now, when we get to the upfront contract, how do you establish the upfront contract? Very simple. I will literally do it right now, okay? So I would say this, right? I'd say, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, let's say your name's Bob. I'd say, hey, Bob, typically, these conversations go one of two ways, and I have plenty of these every week and every month. We may get through this call and establish that there's no value, and that's totally okay. We can mutually acknowledge that if that's the case, okay? Alternatively, we may get through this and there might be a few areas aligned to your needs, and it might be worthwhile exploring further. If that's the case, my ask is we leave some time at the end, maybe 5 minutes, to set up some next steps, if that's the case, right? Or alternatively, we walk away. Would that be okay? Now, pause the role play. What I've just done there is I've clearly told them, if there is nothing here, you can walk away. There is no need for us to, beat a dead horse. I'm not going to try to forcibly sell you anything. This is a really powerful tactic that you can use, and it lets people know that there is a way out. The moment you let someone know there is a way out, they're more likely to actually stay. Okay. If I use a dating analogy, right? Like I know this is a bit cheeky, but I've honestly used versions of this the versions of the UFC, the upfront contract, like on dates, but you don't say, hey, the agenda of today's dinner is to get to know you so I can get in your pants. Like, no, I'm not saying that, but like you can literally use a version of that even in your dating life. Like you can literally say, if you're a guy and you're on a date with a girl, you could literally say, hey, look, I don't really want anything from you. If there's no spark here, that's totally fine. We can just be friends. But if there is a spark here, I'd love to explore it with you, and I hope that's cool with you, right? But what you've just done is you've established an upfront contract, and she goes, oh, that's fantastic. Like, this guy's not trying to shove anything down my throat. That could be taken out of context, but, it's such a powerful tool, right? The upfront contract is such a powerful tool. And it can be used in so many different contexts, right? So when you become a master of the upfront contract, you'd be amazed at how quickly people open up to you because they realize you're not trying to force anything. You're not trying to push anything. You're just a cool guy and you're trying to get to know their world, or you're just a cool girl and you're trying to get to know the prospect's world, and maybe you'll send them some software and maybe you won't, right? Who knows? So that is the opening for the discovery. Trust me, this works. This is the proven formula, removes the awkwardness, establishes good rapport at the start of the call, at the start of the meeting, and it's a nice soft intro into the meat of the discovery. Now, I might go past this because we've already spoken about the agenda. Now, let's go into the opening, right? So how do you frame up the customer one-pager, and how do you start conducting discovery? Very straightforward, right? So as soon as you finish the agenda, you've done your upfront contract, you've talked about the purpose, you've done all the intros, great, fantastic. That should be a quick 5 to 7 minutes max out of a 45-minute block, unless the prospect is feeling really chatty and they want to kind of chat more and yap about their life, then just let them, right? Like, just get to know them a little bit more. I'm not saying that you should cut them off. Now, once all of that is done, what you want to do is frame up the one pager. And I'd usually say something like, hey, Bob, let's say your name's Bob. I said, Bob, this might be a little bit different to other meetings or calls that you've had with potential vendors. But I don't want to just jump to our solution, because our solution is really broad. We can do a lot of things for you. But I want to make sure that anything I share about our solution is contextualized 100% to your world. So to do that, I've actually built out a summary of your business based on any publicly available information I could find. Some of it might be right, some of it might be wrong, but I'd love to just share that with you, Bob. And I'd love to get your feedback. I'd love to get your thoughts on what you see valuable or what is actually, correct. And based off that, I promise I will share a bit about us and some insights around how we're helping your peers. How's that sound? That is such a beautiful way to frame up the one pager, because it's humble, it's professional, it's smooth, and it's showing them that you care about them, right? When people know that you care about them, they will want to work with you. This is how you block out competitors. I've had so many competitive deals where I've beaten competitors, not just because our technology is better, but because I gave a fuck. I gave a fuck about my prospect, and they go, hey, this guy's cool, right? This guy really gives a shit about me. And guess what? When you take the time to prepare, you actually start to give a shit about your prospect, right? You're interested, you're really keen in having this conversation, and it shows in your delivery. So then once you do that, you pop open your business overview. Now, for the sake of the example, I'm actually going to do this one over here, which I've already done, right? And so what I would usually do, and I've got a whole bunch of sort of pain finding slides over here where you can start to dig into pain. So I will show you how to go about doing that. But before we get to pain, we want to establish a bit about their business. So you want to sort of spend about 5 to 10 minutes fleshing out details about their business. So what I would usually do is I would start to present this VP, right? So typically what that looks like is I would build the slide out one block at a time. So I wouldn't just have this whole thing sitting there. I'd kind of go one block at a time. So I would basically say, hey, my understanding about your strategic priorities is X, Y, and Z. I based off what I researched, I understand that growth may be a priority. Sustainability I could see was on your website, so I think that could be a priority. And I saw a lot about customer trust. How does that sound? Is that in line with your goals, right? Or is there anything that you would add to this? What you want to do here is to start to get them to talk about their business. A lot of tech sales reps skip this part. They get straight into tech. Even worse than that, some of them get straight into their own product. Like, that is such an unsexy conversation. Like, a prospect is going to sit there and go, oh my God, another fucking pitch. Like, I'm getting pitched at again for 45 minutes. Like, why did I agree to meet this idiot? You know what I mean? So you don't want to do that. Then you want to go from strategic priorities, you want to go into the technology priorities. So I know it says key initiatives, but this is really technology priorities. So then you want to go into the technology priorities. You want to share, so if I go to the sample VP over here, you've done the strategic goals. Then you want to go into tech goal 1, press enter, build this out, press enter. So this should all be animated. So, basically you could just go here, animate. I'll just do it in real time actually, and then I'll build it out so we can do this together in presentation mode. Hope you don't mind, I'm being pretty dynamic here and doing this off the cuff. So essentially what this looks like is if we go into slideshow mode, I'm literally going to go, hey, my understanding is this is your strategic goal 1, this is your strategic goal 2, this is your strategic goal 3. What do you reckon? Is that right? Is there anything you would add to that? Then you would go, look, Bob, I wasn't able to get a whole lot of information off your website, but my understanding is just hypothesizing based off some of our other clients in your space that these could be some of your technology goals. How does that sound, right? What am I missing? Tell me a little bit about what's going on technology-wise. Then they'll tell you, okay? Then what you can do is say, Bob, my understanding or hypothesis could be, I could be wrong, could be that these could be a couple of your challenges. How does that sound to you? Then they'll start to tell you about their challenges, right? So I will talk to you specifically about pain finding. I've got a framework that I use for pain finding in a couple of seconds, but this is how you start to get them to open up about, essentially their business. Now, once you have scene set with this and gotten them to start talking, then what you want to do is to start really digging into the pain, right? So how I typically do pain finding is in two different areas, right? So one is broad pain and two is focused pain. So broad pain is some of this stuff over here, right? Like you're literally just going to say, hey, Bob, I think that some of your technology challenges could be, technology modernization. It could be cloud adoption. It could be improved customer technology, right? These are all broad pain areas. So you want to start to get them to talk to you about what their broad pains could be, right? And so, a good way to do this is with open-ended questions. Bob, so if I was role-playing this, I'd say, Bob, just broadly, what are some of the technology challenges that you're facing around some of these tech goals, right? And that starts to give you some of those high level pains. Now, as all of that is happening, I am taking notes. I am or typing notes down quickly and starting to see, okay, is there stuff that we can help with? Is there pain here that is aligned to our solution? Is there, because you got to understand, pain finding is a bit of an art. There is general pain that they have, and then there's specific pain that they have that you can help with. And that's what you're trying to find. You're trying to find the stuff that you can help with, not just a whole bunch of really broad shit, right? So once you cover the technology goals, you can throw out a couple of broad pain areas, see what their vibe is, ask them some open-ended questions. Hey, tell me about your broad challenges to achieve these goals. Is there anything that's really burning and top of mind for you in the next 6 to 12 months in X area, right? So if you sell CRM, you're like, hey, in terms of customer strategy and, customer supporting technology, what are some of your broad challenges? What are some of the things that you guys are looking to do? If it's cybersecurity, I sold cyber for 5.5 years. I would often ask that really broad question. Look, what's your cyber strategy to mature cyber in the next few years? What do you see as some of your biggest cyber challenges that you would love to address? Start to get them to open up. Now, once you have gotten some broad level pain, broad level questioning, then we want to start getting focused. How we get focused is by taking them down specific areas that you as a business are really good at solving. So what I've highlighted that here, right? So in terms of specific focus pain, the pain is reverse engineered from your defensible differentiators. Now, this is a pretty specific concept. You've probably never been taught this, but your defensible differentiator is something that you do as a business really, really, really well. And it's not just a differentiator, it's defensible because other competitors have tried to do what you do and they've just not been able to do it. Okay, so I'll give you an example for CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike's got one of the best managed services solutions in the world, right? And I don't know if competitors have caught up, but I still don't think they really have because CrowdStrike has scale. But one of their best solutions, and I did a ton of these deals, is something called Falcon Complete, right? So any of you CrowdStrikers that are listening to this, you're probably laughing because you're like, holy fuck, he knows Falcon Complete. Yes, I sold a ton of Falcon Complete, but that was one of the best managed EDR solutions in the market, and it's something that no one else could do. So if you're selling Okta, for example, I think Okta is really strong with customer identity, like CIEM. I could be wrong. I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, but a lot of my Okta friends that used to work at Okta used to do a lot of CIEM deals. So maybe that's the defensible differentiator. So what you want to do in terms of focused questioning is reverse engineer your questions from the things that you're really strong at doing. So an example of what I would do is I knew that CrowdStrike was really good at detection and response. So my line of questioning, once I'd done all the broad questioning, when I wanted to really start going down specific rabbit holes to see if they have some challenges in areas that I know we're really strong at, is I would start to ask them questions like, how do you currently respond to threats after hours? Who responds in your team if you guys are short-staffed? If you don't have the ability to respond currently, what happens in the instance of a large-scale cyber attack? Do you have a overflow plan with like an MSP to be able to step in and, handle that scenario? Like, what do you guys do if touch wood, shit hits the fan, right? I would really start to go down these specific rabbit holes where I know we're really fucking good. And I would start to gauge, what is the response to this? Do the customers start to see this as a challenge, right? And I would maybe test them a little bit. I'd say, hey, look, I mean, not to, if they're not really being receptive or they're kind of blasé, I'd say, hey, look, a lot of your peers see this as a big gap. This is something that has to get addressed in a lot of scenarios, and a lot of organizations we work with, acknowledge that. I mean, I'm just curious, do you see it the same way, right? Start to get them to think about this and go, okay, I mean, maybe I should be thinking about this. That's only if they don't lean in, right? More often than not, if you've done that broad framework, you kind of led into the questioning, right? With some broad questions, you start to understand where is their head at. You question in those broad areas that you're you question in those broad areas that your tech is aligned to. So if you sell cyber solutions, you would just start some broad questioning in the cyber area. If you sell CRM, broad questioning in the CRM area. If you have some cool AI tech, right, you're starting broad questioning in AI. You'll literally ask them, hey, how's AI adoption been internally? How would you say your organization's AI maturity is? What's the game plan to really drive AI adoption in the next 2 years? Is AI viewed as a competitive advantage? What are some of your challenges with AI adoption? Like, you can start the broad questioning and then they'll give you a bunch of stuff, and then you can start to sift that information and go, we could potentially help with that. Let me double in on that questioning there, right? Tell me about this area. What's the specific challenge there? What is the current state process around X? And then you start to really dig into that, right? So pain finding, guys, is not straightforward, right? I tend to use the framework of broad and focused questioning because that is a good way to start getting you into the level of finding some true pain. If you go straight to focused questioning, you shoot yourself in the fucking foot, because I've seen a lot of reps do this. They come in and they go straight into the very specific technical areas, right? So they're like, how do you do your vulnerability assessment? Is vulnerable, or even worse, asking yes/no questions off the bat. Is vulnerability assessment a problem? No. It's like, shit, okay. Or they'll be like, is email security a problem? It's like, not really. You know what I mean? But instead, you start broad. Hey, how do you guys approach email security? How are you finding the effectiveness of email security? Have you experienced spear phishing a lot this year? Have you seen an uptick in a lot of email attacks? Have there been any sophisticated incidents that have maybe escalated? Like, these are questions that they're broad enough where they can start to tell you stuff. They're thinking about it. They're like, oh yeah, my CFO did get spear phished. Oh yeah, like we ended up losing like 50 grand, but we did recover it. But yeah, that probably shouldn't have happened. Then you can start to go into the focused area and you can say, look, how effective is your mail filtering? It sounds like maybe that's something that's doing okay, but it could probably be doing a lot better. What's your take on that? Then you can start getting into the specific areas. If, for example, you sell a proof point or like a Mimecast, or you sell an abnormal security, you can start to then go into those specific areas. So the goal here is to identify gaps that have business impact if unaddressed. That is the goal, right? If you don't address this area, how badly does it fuck your business up? And then you want to start to really understand, what does that impact look like, right? So when I was selling CrowdStrike, I would start broad. I'd say, hey, tell me about your cyber strategy. How big is your fleet? Do you have a lot of contractors? Have you guys had any potential cyber scares before, right? How do you guys currently tackle incidents after hours? Now I'm starting to get focused. How good would you say your detection capability is if someone was malicious and already inside your environment? Do you have the ability to detect that right now, or have you detected something like that before? Right, you can start to then go down the specific areas. Then when I start to find some pain, I would then ask them some point blank questions like, look, hypothetically, if that was to happen, what's the consequence of that? You know, does that halt production? Does that affect your supply chain? Like, you then start to understand quantified business impact. Then you've got some pain that is really serious. And that's where you want to get to, right? So another way that I mentioned this is you want to start to understand the current as-is process. How is stuff currently done? And what are the gaps in that current process that will have impact if something bad happens? That is the goal of pain. Now, again, pain finding is hard. I get it. Pain finding is hard, but try that framework for reference, right? So try using the VP slide to get them into the mood of talking in the conversation. Use that to surface technology objectives. Use that to then go one layer down into technology pain areas. That's your broad questioning. Then go one layer down with your focused questions. How to come up with your focused questions? Really simple. Look at what you do really well as a business and then reverse engineer questions to start getting them to that organic outcome of, hey, maybe we need something that can tackle this problem, right? And that's where your solution fits in really well. There is an art to this. It's not straightforward, but if you need help, you know, digest this video, come up with some ideas, maybe book some time in the link that my team would have left down below. We can have a chat about this. But this, guys, this is like the money-making skill. When you can get good at pain finding, when you can get good at finding legitimate pain that has serious business impact, that's when you get deals done. There's a phenomenal book. It's called The Qualified Sales Leader. If you haven't read it, read it. It's on Spotify Premium. You can just download it and listen to it. But they talk about this as being one of the most critical things. If you can find the customer's as-is current state process / their environment, what their challenges are, the business impact of those challenges, and the business outcome that the business is trying to achieve, the customer is trying to achieve, that's when you start getting your deal shaping up really well, right? Like, that's what the foundations of a great deal is. So let's skip past that. Okay, so now that you've found pain, we're getting into the kind of the closeout of the discovery. We're getting to the back end of the discovery. So how do you effectively close out your discovery? You want to start to summarize the pain, give them a bit of a mini value proposition, and then establish urgency. So I'll show you how to go about doing that. So once you've found some pain, and again, this doesn't have to be massive. Like, you don't have to have all the pain. You just need to have something that you can tell is pretty important to them to solve. And it's something that you can solve for. When you have that, you have enough to start to establish some urgency, because keeping in mind, pain finding is a continuous process. You can find more pain on the demo. In fact, it's something that I used to do a lot of when I was in CrowdStrike. When I was in Gartner, I would really dig into pain in the demo, because as I'm showing them stuff, I can start to ask them some questions, right? Questions like, hey, how are you doing that right now? That feature right there, you seemed kind of curious about it. How are you doing that right now? Oh, you're not doing that. Okay. What's the gap there? Like, what's the challenge if you guys don't address that? Right? Like, you can really start to dig in and find a lot on the demo as well. So the goal with discovery is you just need to find some good quality surface to mid-level pain, and then you can really start to go deeper and deeper and deeper in the further conversations, because that just keeps building on itself. Now, how do you close out the discovery, or at least move from the middle of the discovery into the close? So firstly, recap the pain to the prospect, right? The next thing is, I haven't actually mentioned this over here, but what you can do, actually, no, I will come back to that later. So firstly, recap the pain to the prospect quickly. Hey, here's all the challenges that you mentioned. How's that sound? Is there anything that you would add to that? 2, ask them, hey, does the business acknowledge these challenges, right? Is this something the business, like not just you, but broadly the business, the executive, as something that needs to be addressed, as something that needs to be tackled? Then the next one, ask them the question, hey, if the business plans to address this, right? Assuming the business plans to address this, is there a plan to do so? Is there a project, right? Is there something that is in place to actively solve this problem? Now, this is the moneymaker question over here, regardless of the solution or method. I'd literally tell them, hey, look, whether or not you buy us or someone else or how you plan to solve it, putting that aside, is there a date in mind by which you need to have some sort of solution to this problem? That will tell you the urgency. That will tell you when they're thinking about tackling this urgency. Lastly, if you do have the time to ask this, again, because we're starting to get to the end of the call, hey, why is that date important, right? Has it been committed to the board? Is it a renewal of an existing solution? Like, why does that problem need to be solved by this date? That will very quickly tell you the legitimacy of the urgency, right? And so now you've got pain and you've got some high-level urgency. Now, this doesn't always go textbook, right? Sometimes you might ask this question. You might say, hey, does the business acknowledge these challenges need to be addressed? They might say, look, they really don't, right? Your prospect might say, look, they don't. Like your prospect might say, look, I do. I would like to solve this, but the business doesn't acknowledge this. Then you can ask them the question, look, hypothetically, given that's the case, given that the business doesn't acknowledge it, is this something that you personally, Mr. Prospect or Mrs. Prospect, have as a project that you might want to tackle, right? Is this something that you would personally like to tackle and then take the business on the journey, right? That will tell you, is this person that you're speaking to invested in solving this problem? If they do say yes, then you can continue your line of questioning, right? Regardless of the solution or method, when would you personally like to tackle this problem, right? And then you can find out why that date is important. So now you have legitimate pain and urgency. You know what is bothering them and roughly by when they would like to solve it and why. Once that is done, what I would do is provide a short overview of the capability that is most aligned to their challenge. Remember, do not overpitch, right? So what I would usually do here is I would have some sort of, let me just pull this up. I would usually have a slide, so this is a set of sample decks that I would use, right? So this is an example of a discovery deck. So I have 3 slides in the discovery deck. So I have one slide to establish trust and overview of your brand. The second slide is the customer value proposition, VP, and then one slide that is the solution slide, kind of overviewing your broad solution. So what I would usually do at this stage, right, and guys, apologies if I'm going really quickly here, but I'm trying to give you a lot of value, so re-watch this if you need it, okay? But what I would then do to close out the discovery is I would typically flash up a single slide, like a platform slide. Every vendor has this. It's usually just like an overview of the entire capability suite. And I would then give them a very quick, like 3-minute overview. I'd say, look, based off the challenges that you shared, this is how we would help you. This is how we're actually helping your peers, right? This specific capability or these couple of different capabilities is where I see the value in helping you. Now, you want to also inoculate yourself from any price objections immediately, because they might look at that and go, okay, well, tell me the dollars. So you might just say, look, I'm still not 100% sure if what you kind of need, but I think it could be here. Would it, and this is where you transition into the closeout. So if I go back into the role play, I'd say, look, would it be worthwhile if we set up some time to explore this further, and I'll share a demonstration with you and really give you an overview, the nuts and bolts of how we would help you address some of these challenges. And That way you will have an idea of whether or not this is relevant. And then on that next meeting, I can also give you a rough idea based off your feedback of where you think the solution could be. I could give you a rough idea of pricing so we can figure out if this is viable for both of us. How does that sound? So now you've just smoothly gone into that next step, right? And so you've also inoculated yourself against the objection of, give me the price right now. You do want to be a little bit careful. I have done this before. I have had discovery calls where I've just gone, you know what? This person's asked me about pricing, but I can sense intent. I can sense that they're trying to figure out, where the dollars could be. And then I would give them an incredibly broad range. I'd give them like a super broad range. So when I was at CrowdStrike, if I could sense their intent and they were like, look, just don't bullshit me, tell me the price roughly. And I'd say, look, it's really hard for me to tell you right now. I don't know if this is the solution for you, but the range could be between $15,000 a year to $120,000 a year. I'm not sure, but based off the challenges you shared, I think there's capabilities across that entire spectrum that could really help you tackle a number of problems. But my ask is, on the next call, let's just go through the demo so you can see what's relevant. And then at the end of that call, I can give you a bit more of a definitive idea, whether it's closer to the 15 or closer to 75 or closer to 40. I'm not sure at this stage. How's that sound? So it's a nice kind of deflectory answer, right? But it also, in their mind, gives them a very rough idea, right? And if they go, look, we can't even afford 15,000, then you're like, okay, I'm going to back right off this because there's no point, right? Like you can't even afford the cheapest thing we sell. Now, I'm not saying you should do that on a discovery, but if you do get asked that question and they're really pressing, that's how you could do it. But the best way to inoculate yourself against that objection is proactively say it to them as you're closing out the call. Once you do your mini value proposition, once you do your mini pitch, again, mini, not a big pitch, mini, summarize their pain and then just share a couple of things with them that would align to their pain, so you get them interested so they lean in. And then you just inoculate against that price thing by saying, look, it's still early days, I don't know, but I think there could be something here. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. On the next call, I'll take what you've shared with me and I will build out a custom demo for you, and we'll show you exactly how we'll tackle all of these areas. And then you tell me if the solution makes sense in your mind, and at the end of that next call, I can give you a bit more of a definitive idea of a pricing range. How's that sound? Done. Lock in the meeting, lock in the demo, and you're finished with the discovery. The last thing I will say is always finish the call on a high, right? So let them know, hey, love this discussion. This has been really valuable for me to learn about you. I hope it's been valuable for you, Mr. or Mrs. Prospect, to learn a bit about us. I appreciate your time and I'm excited for that next conversation. I'd love to show you how and where we can help, and I'll share some more customer stories with you. How's that sound? And that's how you wrap up a discovery. That is the textbook A to Z of how you run a discovery to get what you want, to give them what they want, and everyone leaves happy, right? So I know I've just given you a ton of stuff, right? This is a long video. I've just given you a ton of stuff. Again, this is going to take some trial and error, okay? Like creating the pain questions is going to take a bit of trial and error. Getting used to using a value proposition slide like this is going to take some trial and error. This is the sort of stuff that most sales reps are not trained on doing. But I'm telling you, when you do this, your discoveries just become so sexy. And it's so important to do that, because sexy discoveries where you find pain and urgency and you build value, that's what leads to flow through to the next stage. And that's what leads to higher close rates, because you have genuine pain and genuine urgency. You miss this shit, you're going to keep doing discoveries and your prospects are going to keep telling you that they're not interested, telling you to fuck off. Like it's a really tough place to be. So I keep telling you, change how you operate. So following the discovery, it's also really important that you have the following post-discovery actions, right? So you want to make sure that you're not missing this stuff. Like this stuff is incredibly critical. So number one, Send them a well-crafted summary of the conversation, right? Best way to do this, guys, if you're not already using Read AI, I highly recommend that you get onto it, right? So you should know Read AI, or if you don't, use it. But also, like, if you use Microsoft, you guys are a Microsoft shop at the company you work at, then you can use Copilot. But if you're a Google shop, I would highly recommend that you use Read AI. It's phenomenal. It gets a transcript of all your conversations. So like, this is very useful for your post-meeting summaries, right? So if I look at like my recent meetings, I can literally go onto this and I can see the summary of the meeting. I can see the full transcript of the meeting. I got to be a little bit careful because this meeting was pretty red hot. But I can literally see the full transcript of this meeting over here. And the useful part about that is I'm able to then punch that into GPT. I'm able to punch that into GPT and actually get a summary of that meeting for an email, right? So like if I take this one, for example, so this was actually a meeting with one of my students. I don't think he'll mind me doing this, but we can literally take what is going on over here. Okay, weird. Sorry, that was no good. Let me see if I can take those on. Here we go. So I could literally take this transcript over here. Perfect. Take the transcript, download the meeting transcript. I'm able to then go to ChatGPT. If you haven't got the paid version of this, I'd highly recommend that you get the paid version of this and ignore my weird searches. I search up all sorts of random crap, as you do. Probably shouldn't have highlighted that, actually. Probably looking at that going, why is he looking up? Jesus, I search up some funny shit. All right, so take the transcript, and you can literally ask GPT to take my transcript, summarize it into a follow-up email, include a section for key challenges and items discussed. And GPT will literally take that and summarize a fantastic email for me. So what I'm trying to say here is you absolutely should not be missing out on your post-meeting actions, right? So these are your post-meeting actions. Take your transcript, dump it into GPT, ask it to create a post-meeting summary, summarize all the key challenges, summarize all the key initiatives from the customer and any items around how your solution can help them. Very straightforward. That's your follow-up meeting, and that can be done in like 30 seconds, right? Like I remember this stuff used to take me like forever to do back in the days when I had to do this manually, because I was like sifting through notes and trying to figure stuff out and then trying to like pretty it up and make it sound good. Total waste of time, right? So with GPT, like the velocity with which you can get this stuff done is just way quicker. So you should be doing that. The next thing that you should be doing, and again, you can use GPT to do this. Actually, I'll see if I can find, I don't actually have a transcript from a actual live sales call because that's all on my corporate laptop. But what you should also do is take that very same transcript and punch that into the 3 whys template, right? So again, this is really straightforward. You literally take the information from the transcript, or you just take the transcript itself and you just say, hey, can you summarize the pain the customer is facing? And I'll tie this back into the 3 whys in a second. Can you summarize the pain the customer is facing and any details they shared around that, any anecdotes, any quotes? Can you provide me information, a concise number of bullet points around their urgency and their reasons for the engagement and when they're actually looking to engage. So that'll summarize the timelines piece. And what you can do is literally take that and punch that into the 3 whys template. I wonder if I have a template over here. No, I don't have a template for you. Okay, well, you can punch that literally into a template. I will include a template in this asset actually, because I'm feeling charitable, but you should be able to literally take that, punch that into this template. So the why anything, that is your pain, right? So this is something that I learned during my time at Zscaler. It's a phenomenal tool. If you're not using a 3 whys document, like, you are absolutely missing out. The best time to use the 3 whys document is straight after a discovery. And I like to use it because it's a good opportunity for me to test information, right? It's a good opportunity for me to test my deal. How much deep information do I have about pain and urgency? This doesn't necessarily cover the power piece, right? And the power really sort of encapsulates your economic buyer, your budget, all the good stuff around that. But the 3 whys template over here will tell you the why anything, which is the pain, and it'll tell you the why now, which is the urgency. The why Zscaler, that's basically why your solution, right? So this section over here, this you fill out after the demo, right? Like this is really just an internal asset at this stage that you're using to make sure that you have a legitimate deal, right? This is really an internal asset to, like, maintain your sanity, right? So yeah, so take the information, take your transcript from Read AI. If you don't have Read, whatever transcription tool. If you don't have a transcription tool, like, you're in the dark ages. So highly recommend you get a transcription tool. Punch that transcript into GPT, get the paid version, it's phenomenal. Or you can get DeepSeek. I don't know how good DeepSeek is, but you can use DeepSeek or GPT 4.0. Punch that into GPT, ask it to summarize into an email, including the pain points, the key initiatives, and any alignment around your solution and how you can help. Fire that off to the customer, and then take that same transcript, ask GPT to summarize the key challenges and the pain points, include anecdotes. So tell GPT, include quotes and anecdotes that are critical to any of those pain points, and then ask GPT to also, say, create a table or maybe create 2 sections, and then say, hey, provide me any information around why the customer wants to, tackle these problems now, and any information around timelines. So that way you can start to see, like, why anything, aka pain, why now, aka urgency, right? Like, you can start to figure out, like, the components of your deal, which is incredibly critical. So that is your 2 post-discovery actions. What I will say is that the why us, the capabilities that you offer that will align to their pain points, don't worry so much about that. This will develop, but really what you're trying to do is answer these 2 things, because you need to figure out, like, how legitimate is your deal, right? Share that with your manager as well, right? Get your manager's inputs. Hey, I have this information. What am I missing? What else should I dig into, right? So this starts to help you understand the legitimacy of your deal. Even if you're an SMB, even if you're in small business sales, you should be doing this. This is really quick. It's not rocket science, guys. Like, this is like 5 minutes. It's like 5 minutes with AI. It's fantastic, right? So it's a really good framework. So yeah, like I said, I'll probably include in this slide deck that you'll have access to. I'll update it so you have, like, a template that you can just fill in, right? It's pretty simple. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up the video for this one here. The next one, we're actually gonna go into the second stage of the sales process, which is the demo. So again, if you're selling SaaS, like this is usually the logical next stage, right? Like just get them onto a demo, continue to validate pain, continue to validate urgency, start to build the value in their eyes with a nice show and tell aligned to their pain points. I'll cover that in the next video. And guys, I know that I've thrown a ton of concepts at you in this video. Like this is probably one of the most meatiest videos in the series of like small business rep readiness. So if there's anything that you're struggling with, drop it in the comments below. I'll try to comment on it. Alternatively, if you're really struggling and you're trying to figure out how do I implement this into the business that you work in, just book a call with me. I'm more than happy to just hop on and have a bit of a strategy consult. No obligations to work with me or anything, but my team should have a link down there. So just book a call and let's hop on and have a yarn. But hope that was useful, and I'll see you in the next one.